Alhamdulillah, very good.
You want ice cold water or just plain tank?
Any is fine. Choices is difficult to deal with, isn't it?
We can come closer if you want, it's okay. We just thought we're going to try and move this upstairs next time instead of downstairs. No, you can come closer if you want, don't worry. Bismillah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay. Because I told some people 3:30. But I think can be okay. Okay. Boleh ya? Okay, you got the book?
No, I got it. PDF.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa Sayyidina Muhammad. Bismillah. So we're glad to come back for this particular series again. It'll be the last month. Had to have it in person. Plus, so next month onwards we'll go back to online. And you okay? Okay. Okay. Bismillah. Is it even on? Is it? Yeah, now it's on. Okay, and then and now alhamdulillah we're in the month of Shawwal. Jom masuk kam jemput. In the month of Shawwal, and in the first week of Dhul Qaeda, which is next month, because it's Ramadan, Shawwal, Dhul Qaeda, and Dhul Hijjah when you have the Hajj season. So in the month of Dhul Qaeda is the month that about 300, say 10 years ago or so, the Imam Al-Haddad passed away. And as you know that Syed Muhiyuddin Al-Attas is in residing in Tarim now, Tarim Hadramaut, which is present day Yemen, where he's conducting his research for his PhD. And much of the tradition of Tarim that has become famous for outside of that region is due to the work of literature, the books of Imam Al-Haddad. I think we've covered the Book of Assistance here years ago, and that book is available downstairs as well. And so in the first weekend of Dhul Qaeda every year in Malaysia for the past 15 years, they've organized an event called the Hawl of Imam Al-Haddad. Hawl typically means a year. A year's worth is hawl, right? Just like in zakat, you say hawl, you do your zakat. So they do the Hawl of Imam Al-Haddad every year in the first weekend of Dhul Qaeda. So that typically happens 5 weeks after Shawwal, after your Hari Raya. And it's happening in Malaysia then 26th, 27th, 28th of May in a few cities, and in Singapore and early June. So we thought in commemoration of that, in recognition of that, that today's session will do something in connection to Imam Al-Haddad, because he did after all write a text on Aqidah, on faith, and this whole series is about faith and Aqidah and Iman. I think that should suffice. So okay, maybe in summary then. So in summary, the life of Imam Al-Haddad, he's a scholar from Tarim that passed away about 300 years ago. He's become, you could say, in modern language, poster boy for the tradition of Tarim. The most known scholar from that tradition in Tarim. His most known work is Book of Assistance, and that book is being read now across the world until today in multiple languages. And he was born and raised in that small town village in Tarim, in a place where tradition or education is not bogged down with we should have slides and we should have PowerPoint. The room must have aircon and tables and all this technology. No, it's knowledge is what it is. He became blind at age 4, so that's another remarkable thing. At age 4 he became blind. Some say age 6. And yet he delved into his love for worship and knowledge, and his love and worship, his love and relationship with the Prophet Muhammad. That it was said that as a young boy, So typically in Arab culture, pre-dhuhr, about 2 hours before dhuhr, 3 hours before dhuhr, that can be a time when people go back to sleep because they wake up for tahajjud before fajr, and they might have a lesson or two after subuh, after fajr, and then that 2 or 3 hours or 2 hours before dhuhr is when they sleep. But the likes of Imam Haddad, as a young boy, they will go into a mosque and they will pray 200 rak'ats of duha and extra prayers, and sometimes this happens at night. And this is something that he did as a child. So the indications of that scholarship was seen, and worship was seen at an early age, until he later, mashallah. So, and he passed away around the age of 80. And many of his students and he has direct influence with the Malay world, in the South Africa and so forth, and in today's world, across the world essentially. But yet this is to understand the context of things, not just Imam al-Haddad, but also in the likes of Imam Ghazali and so forth. Unlike J.K. Rowling, who traveled around the world to promote Harry Potter, these people wrote books and just kept it to themselves and just taught a few students. But yet their works became far and wide, without any marketing, without any publisher pushing their work. So it's important to understand that context, I think. Naam. And Imam al-Haddad studied with a man called Habib Umar bin Abdurrahman Al-Attas, who is from the grandfather of Syed Muhiyuddin, I think about 10 generations up. Naam. So I think that's sufficient, because we're not here to talk too much about Imam al-Haddad, but actually the work itself. So I'll pass over to Syed Muhiyuddin. Ya, Bismillah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin, wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi washabbihi ajma'in. When we discussed with Zain bin Abdul Rahman Al-Haddad about what we might do for the month commemorating the Hawl of Imam Al-Haddad, Zain initially suggested that I ought to read the Aqidah, the creed, the creedal statement that Imam Al-Haddad formulated, which is sometimes printed together with his book called the Nasa'ih Ad-Diniyah, Religious Counsels, translated into Malay as Nasihat Agama dan Wasiat Iman. That book is an amazing work because it's been accepted by many as the presentation of the khulasa, or the substance, the essence of the Ihya being summarized in one volume. Now, I decided after some consultation that we should focus instead on Imam al-Haddad's advice for building, establishing and holding on to a proper aqidah. So this chapter is a chapter from the Book of Assistance, the Risalatul Mu'awana, and it is telling that the section discussing on aqidah is in between a section that talks about Al-Quran and Sunnah, to hold on to the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet, and then it is followed by a chapter that discusses about immediately Ada'il Fara'id wa Jitinabil Maharim, to perform your religious duties and to abstain from doing things which are prohibited by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This therefore suggests to our mind that in the Ba'alawi tradition of practice, of which Imam al-Haddad is a well-known representative, knowledge is meant to be practiced. Yes, and they follow what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught in one of his prayers. A'udhu bika min ilmin la yanfa'. My Lord, I seek protection from knowledge which does not benefit. So Imam al-Haddad begins the chapter by saying, wa alayka bi tahsini, it is incumbent upon you that, or you ought to refine and strengthen your aqidah, and it ought to be on the minhaj, or the manhaj, the way of the firqatul najiyah. This notion of the firqatul najiyah is the saved sect, yes, because this returns back to the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in which he said that my community, or first the Prophet mentioned that the Israelites and the Christians broke into 71 and 72 sections respectively, and that my community shall be split into 73 sections, all of which will not be safe except for the one, Al-Firqatun Najiyah. And this is the sect of which I am upon it and my companions are upon it. So there are scholars in the intellectual tradition of Islam, in particular Abdul Qahir al-Baghdadi, who wrote the book called Firqatun Najiyah. What is this saved sect, i.e. the one that the Prophet is on and the companions were on? Yes, it developed what is called a genre in the writings of Aqidah, which is sometimes translated into English as heresiography. Yes, i.e. the writing upon the heretical groups and sects, i.e. those who miss the mark with regards to belief. Because true enough, as the Prophet ﷺ has stated, over time, yes, the community was tried with certain tests pertaining to the Aqidah. Early on, yes, there were, developed the sects of the Murji'ites, yes, the Murji'ah and the Khawarij and the Mu'tazilah, these various sects. If you read the history of Islamic theology, you'll come across these various groups, in that each of these different sects, that they would introduce innovations, let us say, in belief, innovations that, let us say, that run contrary to the spirit of the Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So Imam al-Haddad, writing 300 years ago, which is close to 1,000 years or slightly more, because he was born in 1044, isn't it? 1044 Hijrah, so 1,000 years after the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's time, he was saying that even 1,000 years after the Prophet, that you should remain with regards to your Aqidah on the path of the Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, on the path of the Firqatun Najiyah, the saved sect. Yes, this is truly remarkable when we consider what was happening around the world in the 17th century, isn't it? Because in the 17th century, in the Malay archipelago, you have Sheikh Nuruddin Ar-Raniri, who was combating the false wujudiyah. He was combating the false monists and pantheists, those who were introducing new belief systems which ran contrary to the worldview of Islam. Yes, and in Europe, yes, these scholars would be contemporaries with René Descartes. Yes, and Descartes initiated a revolution in philosophy, that which gradually leads to its secularization, because he established the foundations of philosophical creed, yes, so to speak, yes, philosophical belief in God, which is established purely on rational foundations, of which eventually it will be rejected also on rational grounds, so to speak, and then eventually it became almost impossible, at the very least in the mainstream, to affirm intellectually, yes, belief in one God, belief in the existence of the afterlife, and belief in the religious foundations of morality. So Imam al-Haddad's existence in history is not therefore only timely for the Islamic world, for the Muslim world, but it serves as a mirror as to what was happening around the world. And Imam al-Haddad was, by consensus of many of the scholars, accepted as the Mujaddid, as that he was the renewer of the faith in that century. And one particular trait, or some particular traits of the Mujaddid, those who would revive the spirit of the religion, as per the hadith of the Prophet, that at the beginning of every century will be a person that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends to renew the commitments towards the religion, yes, and to correct the errors and deviation, and to put back what properly belongs to it that has been separated from the religion. So he's advising us that first and foremost, that we ought to espouse, yes, and hold on to the way of the Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And this is very interesting indeed, because perhaps in modern times, the spirit of the age seems to suggest to us that one ought to be free to believe whatever we want. Yes, we are conditioned somehow to believe that that even matters of creed, matters of faith, we are to treat it as if it was an aesthetical question. Whatever seems to be whatever seems to be to your liking, that's what you ought to believe, and then you can change it at some other point in your life. So Imam Al-Haddad is telling us that we ought to follow the way of the Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And who are they? Humul mutamassikuna bima kana alayhi Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam wa ashabi. They are those, yes, who hold on to the belief of what the Prophet espoused and what the companions of the Prophets were upon. And if you were to look, yes, bifahmin mustaqim and qalbin salim, there are two conditions to arrive at truth, yes, with regards to matters of belief, yes, matters of aqidah. That first and foremost you have to have fahm, yes, an understanding, reason which is mustaqim, which is proper. Because sometimes we may reason wrongly, yes. Sometimes we may reason wrongly. For example, either our deductions are not correct or our inductions are not correct. Take for example in the Quran the first instance of false reasoning, yes. In the case of Iblis, yes, when he was instructed by Allah Subhanahu wa Taala to prostrate before Adam alayhi salam, he said, "But I am better than him. You have made me out of fire, and him, yes, you made out of clay." Yes, first, there is an error in reasoning, but we know that the root of the error is not necessarily rational. It comes from an irrational, let us say, sickness of the soul called superbia or arrogance. Then this arrogance begets envy. And when a person is overcome by sicknesses such as arrogance and envy, or when a being is overcome by that, then it skewers the rational capacity. And so therefore he retorts with something like that. Yes, I'm better than him because I'm out of fire, and him you made out of clay. But you look at the demonstration prior to that, Adam alayhi salam, yes, was made by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to demonstrate his epistemic ability, his ability to name things. And man's ability to name things, yes, to put things in their proper places and to call things by their right names based on relations of things to each other, is not because of our material. Yes, it's not because we are made of clay that we can reason especially well. Because you can imagine a person who is, let us say, 50% body, organic material, and 50% synthetic material, and it would not have, let us say, compromise with his reasoning capacity. Yes, because it refers to the spiritual component of man. It is the spiritual aspect, yes. But he reasons wrongly. So therefore, in order to have the right belief, yes, Imam Al-Haddad says there's two conditions. First and foremost, you must have the right way of reasoning. And then, secondly, you must have a qalbun salim. You must have a sound heart, yes. And these two are interrelated, because in Islamic psychology, both, yes, the intellect and the heart, they work in conformity with each other, in that they are different modes of the same spiritual substance. They are different modes of the same spiritual substance. When it is involved in the process of intellection, it is called the aqal. And when it is involved in receiving spiritual illumination, it is called the qalb. Yes? So therefore, that's why a person who draws closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through ibadah and through the avoidance of sin, she can, yes, perceive the truth even clearer with the intellect. And when Imam Shafi'i complained to his teacher of difficulty in memorization, yes, the teacher then responded in poetic form, pertaining to, if you were to leave behind, yes, mistakes such as sins, then your capacity to memorize would likewise improve. Your capacity to understand would likewise improve. Yes, and Imam Al-Ghazali, yes, as part of the Book of Knowledge, mentions that the amongst the adab of the student is to purify the heart. Yes, because the heart, yes, is the place for the visitation of angelic and angelic crossings, let us say, or angelic transmission, and knowledge is of the nature of light. So if a person were to wrong himself, wrong herself, then that perception of truth, yes, likewise diminishes. And when you look at Imam al-Haddad, yes, he was a person who have been brought up in an optimal ethical spiritual development. That's why he arrives at truth, and he doesn't incline except towards truth. Yes, people of the Ba'alawi tariqah, yes, those who have been brought up in this way, those who were jealously guarded by their parents and their environment, and then this meets their own spiritual capacity, yes, not only are they protected from sin, they are even protected even from the desire towards sin. Yes. So these are two of the conditions. If you were to perceive with a sound heart and a sound intellect, and what ought you to look at? An-nusus. Yes, the basis of our aqidah is an-nusus. Yes, text. The word nas, and in Malay sometimes we say idea yang bernas, isn't it? But the meaning have now somehow been lost, because we think idea yang bernas means a clever idea, a brilliant idea, but rather bernas meaning to say that it is based on the nas, i.e. the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is the equivalence of what is wisdom. Yes. If you were to look at, he said, the nusus al-kitab wa sunnah. So the basis is the Quran, and the basis is the ahadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, al-mutadamminah li'ulumil iman. I.e., if you were to look at the prophetic statements, if you were to look at the verses of the Quran that speaks about al-ulum al-iman, i.e. knowledge pertaining to belief. Yes, because the nusus of the Quran and the Sunnah speaks about a lot more things. Yes, the Prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet does not only speak about matters of belief and creed. He spoke about a lot of things. I remember Professor Al-Attas, at some point, a student asked him, after the Quran, yes, would we consider that the prophetic statements are the best representatives of haqiqah, the best representatives of truth? So he answered by saying, that is indeed true, yes, but the more meaningful statement would be the fact that the Prophet said a great many things. Some of the things that he said pertains to, let us say, household chores and duties. Yes, when he said that, before you sleep, you ought to cover your pots and pans. Yes, well, surely this is not equivalent with his statement when he said that when he speak about Allah and akhirah, isn't it? So meaning to say that you need some qualification there. Yes. Now, if you were to look at the verses in the Quran that speaks about three matters ultimately, because the subject matter of aqidah is three and not more. Yes, one is that it pertains to tawheed, yes, i.e. divinity. The second is that it pertains to prophecy, prophethood and nubuwah. And the third is the matters of the realms unseen, as-sam'iyat, i.e. portents of things to come. For example, what happens at death and after, the resurrection, the speaking about the mizan, yes, and then the crossing of the bridge which spans the hellfire, and then finally the final destination, which is Jannah or Jahannam. So all of these three comprise the science of Aqidah. Yes. So if you were to look at the verses of the Quran and the prophetic statements that speaks precisely about these three subject matters, what do you come to realize? And if you were to look again over and on top of this, طالعت سير السلف الصالح من الصحابة, if you were to look at the biography of the pious predecessors amongst the companions and the tabi'in, those who were students of the companions, those who frequented the company of the companions, you will come to the realization and you would have verified that the truth, yes, مع الفرقة الموسومة بالأشعرية, the truth rests with the group of people who are identified as the Ash'ariyah. Yes, the followers of Imam Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari. And Imam al-Haddad, of course, when he says the followers of Imam Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari, the Maturidiyah are not excluded, because the differences between them is not major. Yes, sometimes it is just a difference of methodology, or rather terminology, but it refers to the same reality, because they are the group which are called the Mu'tadil, yes, the just. Now, is it therefore the exclusive property of the Ash'ariyah to such an extent that outside of these two schools of Aqidah, the Ash'ariyah and the Maturidiyah, all are false? Not necessarily. Rather, we say that these two schools are correct, but if there is possibly another school, i.e. another school of thought that refers to the Quran and the Sunnah, yes, and in line with what the Sahaba and the Tabi'in held, it is possible that they could be correct too. And in history, perhaps some of these were people who chose to remain on the principle of the Salaf. Yes, sometimes the companion of Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, for example, they were neither Ash'ariyah nor Maturidiyah, but they were on the correct path. But generally, why did Imam Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari, yes, initiated his madhab, so to speak, in Aqidah, was because of the fitnah of that time. Yes, the fitnah of that time was that there were two extreme factions, of which his is the moderate statement. One of the group is called the Mujassima. Yes, these were the anthropomorphists, those who resulted to what is called the literal interpretation pertaining to the verses that speak about certain aspects of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's one extreme. And then there's another extreme, for example, the Mu'tazila. Yes, those who were, for lack of a better term, those who rationally interpreted away some of the verses. For example, they deny the existence of the attributes of God, yes, because of their ratiocination, so to speak. Now, because of that, yes, it became important for Imam Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari to state explicitly, yes, their method of ta'wil, to interpret the verses using the method, for example, when it is said by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Yadullah fawqa aydihim. Yes, the hand of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above their hands, literally speaking. Yes, well, Imam Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari and the madhab of the Ash'ariyah would then interpret this to say that it is power, yes, or something else, but or some other more credible interpretation, which is not anthropomorphic in nature, i.e. giving him a bodily aspect. But why do they come to such conclusions? Well, they come to such conclusions not solely because of their rejection of literalism, but because there are verses in the Quran that support, yes, that support the position that you cannot take a literal interpretation with regards to these verses. And why we say that? Because there is a more fundamental verse in the Quran that speaks about the uniqueness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in which he said, Laisa kamithlihi shay'un. There is nothing in existence that is like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore, by definition, God cannot be a body. By definition, God cannot be an atom. God cannot be a substance. God cannot be an electron. Whatever it is that is in the realm of existence, because God is not bound by time and space, because time and space is God's creation. So therefore, that fundamental verse necessitates taking the interpretation that it is to be interpreted either metaphorically, this is the method of Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari, or those of the Salaf, those who predated Imam Ash'ari. And if we read Imam Haddad's Aqidah, he appears to be more inclined towards the way of the predecessors of Imam Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari, i.e. to accept the verses and to allow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to determine its proper meanings. Yes, but for people of the later times, like ourselves, we are so used to more, let us say, concrete and sensual existence and sensate existence. So therefore, we somehow need the clarification. Yes, because we would have been, otherwise we would be tempted, I suppose. Now, so that's one aspect. But notice here what Imam al-Haddad is speaking about, that when it comes to the understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ultimately the source is the Quran and the source is the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But at the same time, we have to give due respect to the scholarly and the intellectual tradition of Islam, because there is the fact that there could be corruption of meaning over time. And then there is the fact that there could be problems of translation. There is also the very fact that sometimes one word can mean two different things in two different languages. Take for example the word religion in English and the word deen in Islam. Yes, although they roughly translate into each other, but we know that in the Quran the term deen has its own semantic content, and the term religion in the West, in European languages, has its own meanings. So because of this, it is very important when a scholar or when a Muslim explains that my religion is Islam, he must mean by religion deen properly, yes, as per the Quranic content. So similarly, when we look at the ulama, when they translated Arabic words into works into Malay in our intellectual tradition of the past, they would be sure to explain the significations so that things do not get lost in translation. Because when Ar-Raniri translated the word deen, he said agama, but agama means balas, agama means this and this and this. Because sometimes one word in one language is polysemous in nature. It contains more than 5 significations, all of them intimately bound with each other. Yes, but in another language, you could reduce some, or you could add certain things. So this is why, therefore, we should have some humility, being people of the later generations, to not, for example, just pick up a translation of the Quran or a translation of the Hadith and assume we know that this is the final interpretation. Yes, unless of course you have done the due work, because it is not impossible that you can learn the religion of Islam in another language such as English, but you have to be aware, for example, that with regard to certain terminologies, you may need more than one word to refer to one particular concept. And some of these concepts would be an essay, isn't it? One concept could be an essay to explain, like the concept adab, for example. Now, so what did Imam Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari do for the science of Aqidah? Is that he established the foundations of the Aqidah, and he also established the adillah. He established the proofs and the arguments, yes, to establish the creedal statement. So if we say, for example, with regards, so we've discussed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's attributes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's, usually in the Malay tradition, this is covered in when you study Sifat 20, isn't it? The 20 attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is a brilliant methodology of teaching about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Must you study the Sifat 20 in order to obtain the right Aqidah? Not necessary. But if you were to study it, it gives you a very strong rational foundation, because it divides, the ulama has established it in such a way that some of the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like existence, what it means, the sifat salbiyah, the sifat ma'ani, the sifat ma'nawi, yes, and this will allow you a framework of thinking which is robust, so to speak, and what would be considered impossibly ascribed to God, and so on. Now, so that's what the Ash'ariyah and its tradition established. Basically, it established the same beliefs of what the Sahaba believed in, because the Sahaba believed in some of these creedal statements without the need for arguments. Maybe because their language capacity was pristine and their hearts were pristine and sound, such that whatever the Prophet ﷺ taught them, they accepted it. Yes, and they accepted it with understanding. But perhaps certain things then needs to be spelled out for the later generations. So this is what Imam Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari did for the later generations. Now, furthermore, Imam Al-Haddad said that it is also the aqidah of the people of Tasawwuf. Yes, it is also the aqidah of the people of Tasawwuf. So we do not therefore, yes, this is a very telling thing, yes, that just because you, these days you have, I mean, there are certain quarters that have popularized Sufism, and people seem to think that the Sufis have their own belief systems. It's as if it is like a different religion, yes. And in some quarters they say, well, I think to the Sufis everything goes, yes. Or that perhaps, they say that I would much prefer Sufism to Islam because Sufism is more beautiful. What kind of a statement is that, isn't it? Well, this is misunderstanding of what tasawwuf is. Yes. Similarly, when Professor Naqib Al-Attas, when he was commenting on one particular Orientalist, he said that in the debate, yes, between Shamsuddin Sumatrani, Sheikh Shamsuddin, with Nuruddin Ar-Raniri, he said that the former was the better Muslim, yes, but the latter was the better thinker. This is a contradiction in terms, yes, because first the subject matter of their debate was Tawheed. Yeah? The subject matter of their debate was the unity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, what do you mean by this very contradictory statement? If you say one of them was the better thinker, that would mean, yes, the better thinker is not a Muslim, isn't it? But how can he not be a Muslim if he was a better thinker and the subject matter is the unity of God? The better thinker would be the better Muslim. And on the other hand, you say, but the other one was the better Muslim, which means that he got Aqidah wrong, which is the foundational thing, but still a better Muslim. So basically, whoever is the better thinker would be the better Muslim, and whoever is the good Muslim is also a good thinker, because the subject matter is the unity of God. Yes, we're not speaking about robotics. We're not speaking about how best to solve a particular engineering problem and so on. That could be true, isn't it? But if the subject matter is religious matters pertaining to the unity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so how could this happen? Yes, this is because of misunderstanding certain things. So now to return to the issue at hand, if you want to know the aqidah of the Ahl Tasawwuf, you have to refer to certain older texts, like the Risalah of Imam Al-Qushayri. So Imam Al-Qushayri is one of the authorities in the science of Tasawwuf, and his book, the Risalah Qushayriyah, details not only the aqidah of the people of Tasawwuf, it talks about also who they were, yes, their history, its definition, and also the concepts which are important and pertinent to the science of Tasawwuf. And Alhamdulillah, Imam Haddad said, وَهِيَ بِحَمْدِلَّهِ عَقِيدَتُنَا. It is also it is also what we affirm. Who are we in this case? It is the إِخْوَانِنَا مِنَ السَّادَاتِ الْحُسَيْنِيِّينَ. It is the belief that is espoused by the descendants of Sayyidina Hussein, who are commonly known as the Al-Abi Alawi. Al meaning to say family member or descendant of Abi Alawi. Now, who is this Abi Alawi? Yes, or the Al-Ba Alawi in the Hadrami context. It is Alawi bin Ubaidillah, isn't it? Bin Ahmad. Yes, Alawi bin Ubaidillah bin Ahmad. So Ahmad bin Isa al-Muhajir was the 9th descendant of the Prophet sallallahu, the 10th, yes, the 10th descendant of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yes, Ahmad bin Isa bin Muhammad al-Naqib, yes, bin Ali al-Uraidi. And Ali al-Uraidi bin Ja'far al-Sadiq. Ja'far al-Sadiq bin Muhammad al-Baqir. Muhammad al-Baqir bin Ali Zain al-Abidin bin al-Husayn. And al-Husayn is the son of Fatimah and Sayyidina Ali bin Abi Talib, and Sayyidatina Fatimah is the daughter of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the Ba'alawis got their name from Alawi bin Ubaidillah. Yes, Ubaidillah is the son of Ahmad bin Isa. Ahmad bin Isa is the one who migrated to Hadramaut, and that is after he perceived there were certain fitan, yes, there were certain tribulations that came to hit the Muslim world, particularly in its epicenter in Baghdad. He was the contemporary, if I'm not mistaken, of Abu Jarir, Imam Jarir at-Tabari. the one who wrote the voluminous Tafsir al-Tabari and the Tarikh al-Tabari, the historian slash Mufassir, the great scholar, yes, the great scholar al-Tabari who used to keep, let us say, correspondence with this leader of the family of the prophetic household. So there was certain fitan that was happening, and this is also what Imam al-Haddad is saying. Yes. So when he saw لما رأى ظهور البدع وكثرة الأهواء, he saw that there were innovations, blameworthy innovations in belief, in religion, and at the same time when people started to follow their whims and desires. And this perhaps owing to first and foremost the increasingly cosmopolitan nature of the Muslim of Baghdad at that time, which because during the Abbasid period there came to be the translation movement, and one of the caliphs amongst the Abbasids supported the Mu'tazilah, yes, and started to persecute some of the imams of the Ahlul Sunnah. And not only that, there was an active translation movement from the various civilizations, not just the Greeks, but also the Persians and the Indians and these sciences into Arabic. This alone was not the cause for worry, but rather that some amongst the population began to espouse teachings which were contrary to the position of the Ash'ariyah. That's one. And then secondly, the challenge also came from the fact of the amount of wealth that started pouring in the Muslim land. Remember the student of Imam Abu Hanifa, I think it was Qadi Yusuf, yes, it was said that why don't you write a book, a treatise on zuhud, because now we have the challenge of wealth, he said. So that people do not become too worldly and forget their akhirah. He instead wrote a treatise on mu'amalah, a treatise on how to handle wealth. Yes, meaning to say how to ensure that your wealth comes from halal sources. This is because, yes, before you can speak about zuhud, which is, let us say, flight from the world in your heart, first and foremost, you have to do that which is wajib, which is to ensure your earnings are halal. Yes, after you have ensured that your earnings are halal, only then can you start to detach your hearts from the wealth. Yes, so he's doing that which is more primary. But nevertheless, this came to motivate, and it is interesting that Imam al-Haddad would mention the migration story of Ahmad bin Isa al-Muhajir in relation to Aqidah. Because remember, when we speak about Aqidah, it's not just about a creedal statement, it's not just about intellectual aspect. There is the function of the heart also. Yes, there is the function of the heart in that he wants to protect his children and progeny. So that's why he decided to migrate. And this migration, together with nearly 70, I suppose, of his family members, yes, nearly 70 of his family members, to an unknown land. Yes, in the tradition of his great forefather, Sayyidina Ibrahim, yes, alayhi salam, who said in one of the verses in the Quran, Inni dhahibun ilallah, I am going to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So i.e. that he migrated for the sake of his religion. And similarly, in the case of his wife, Sayyidatina Hajar, yes, who was brought to the land of Makkah, yes, for a specific purpose in history, like that. So it was far away from the cosmopolitan cities, but it has the effect of saving the aqidah of the children. Yes, and true enough, yes, until today, the Ba'alawis remain consistent in their aqidah. They remain consistent and they remain as guides to the rest of humanity, not just to their own selves. And until quite recently, we know that when we read the books of history of Hadramaut, the valley, yes, is relatively unknown to those outside of it. In that they may have heard stories about it, they may have read books about people who have traveled to it, they know of the scholars, but few, yes, people in the past reached it. Until we read, there is a book called the Rihla al-Maghribiyah, yes, the Moroccan Rihla, by a Moroccan scholar who traveled to Hadramaut. Yes, he found it to his surprise, the way of lives that was established there. Yes. Nevertheless, this was what this was what motivated Imam Ahmad bin Isa al-Muhajir, yes, until he reached Hadramaut. فَأَقَامَ بِهَا إِلَىٰ أَن تُوفِيَ. He remained in Hadramaut until he passed away. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give barakah to him, yes, because حَتَّى اشْتَهَرَ مِنْهُمُ الْجَمُّ الْغَفِيرُ بِالْعِلْمِ وَالْعِبَادَةِ وَالْوِلَايَةِ وَالْمَعْرِفَةِ. As a result of his ijtihad, as a result of his struggle for the sake of the aqidah of his children, the sake of the religion of his children, his progeny, yes, the Ba'alawi, became known as a collective that perhaps no other families has seen as many who are known in their knowledge, their ibadah, their wilayah, sainthood, and their knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At some point they were speaking in history that there were points in history in which the masjid, the jami' where they prayed the Jum'ah congregation, that in the first saf, yes, which can fit, let us say, 300 people, it was filled all with muftis, i.e. those who have reached the highest, let us say, accomplishment with regards to legal aspects of the religion. But they were not only known for their mastery of the Sharia, but they were also known for their wilayah, i.e. what they have cultivated in terms of knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is a sound method that has been tried and tested generation after generation. So also, after having said this, Imam Haddad then continues to say, وَيَنْبَغِي لِكُلِّ مُؤْمِنٍ. It is very important for every believer to protect his aqidah by memorization of the aqaid al-a'imma. Yes, by memorizing the creedal statements of what was written by the predecessors. One of which is the Aqidatul Awam of Ahmad al-Marzuki. Yes, and this they teach their children to start memorizing it. Yes, children as early as 4 and 5 years old, they learn to memorize the Aqidatul Awam. In the Ba'alawi tradition, there is a man by the name of Sheikh Ali bin Abu Bakr al-Sakran who wrote a formulation of the Aqidah, and this becomes the basis even in Malay, that you have Shahadat Tuqku, isn't it? The content of the Shahadat Tuqku is roughly based on the Aqidah of Sheikh Ali bin Abu Bakr al-Sakran. And the content is rather simple. And when you read the creedal statement by Imam al-Haddad, it's only a few pages long, but it covers what ought you to know about the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his uniqueness, about prophethood and the afterlife. Now, if you want to have knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Imam al-Haddad said, وَلَا تَتَوَغَّلْ فِي عِلْمِ الْكَلَامِ. Do not delve deep into rational theology. Yes? If your intention is to arrive at the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is telling because what is rational theology, what is discursive theology, it is a particular discipline that was developed in the history of our intellectual tradition, basically to remove doubts that pertain to our belief system. So therefore, it is of the nature of the antidote, and the antidote is sometimes derived from poison. So a person who has no doubts to begin with, why would you subject yourself to such things? Yes, that which would be doubt-inducing. Yes, doubt-inducing, for example. Of course, unfortunately, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decided, from time to time, the Muslim community have been subjected to elements of things that have a tendency to challenge their worldview, yes, the worldview of the world. So therefore, they may need some measures, only insofar as they can return to the pristine statement of the Aqidah. There were times in the past in which the Muslims were troubled with the philosophers, particularly the Neoplatonic Aristotelians. Aristotelianism presented a serious challenge to many of the intellectuals at that time. Prior to that, they were presented with several other challenges. And in our times, the greatest challenge against our Aqidah is the secularism as a philosophical program and its various ideological iterations. So let us say maybe several decades ago, this may come through in the guise of a political ideology. It may come through the education system in the philosophy of education. But more recently, I begin to see that it can also come from technologism, yes, a certain form of technologism. And, just as in the past, our philosophers had to make the distinction between science and scientism. Yes, the latter being an ideology. Science is basically, let us say, statements pertaining to the realm of nature, which is supported by the scientific method. But if a person were to say that only science is the guide to reality, or only science yields you positive knowledge, now that's a philosophical statement, which is scientism. It is not science. Yes. Similarly, in our times, yes, it's quite worrisome. Yes, people are beginning to subscribe to technologism, the belief that somehow all of humanity's problems will be solved with the development of technology. Yes, and of course, this lends itself to various sort of things, and it's also partially fed by the imagination which is developed by science fiction novels, isn't it? Perhaps in our society, if you were to read the historical works in the Malay archipelago, there were certain things that we know which is of the nature of mythology, animism, and so on. But these things were gradually combated by the scholars until, if you read the works of Aqidah, yes, they didn't believe in these things. Yes, these things were takhyul. Basically, they were products of the imagination that was Islamized. But in our times, people are, although they might not talk about it all the time, but they worry about the coming of aliens, for example. Yes, they worry about the coming of aliens, or the next thing is, the Terminator, isn't it? our civilization being destroyed by machines. Yes, machines with autonomy destroying ourselves. Well, I think there are many other problems that will kill us before AI reaches that stage, isn't it? I mean, even before it reaches that stage, all that you need is for a very effective killing machine to fall into human beings. Human beings are a greater threat to human civilization than AI. Yes. So that's the case. Yes. So there's this belief in this technologism, this whole worldview being shaped by it, and this is also partly because our horizons has been reduced to what we are fed on the screen. Previously, it was television that did that for us. In the younger generation, which is even more worrisome, is that there is an entire generation raised on basically where we're beginning to see, yes, just the internet, and then the next generation will be raised by their own, let us say, personal AI companions. Yes, that fake intimacy, but becomes their guide to the world. But how are we to know that they are trustworthy guides? Yes. Whereas previously it was the responsibility of parents and teachers to ensure the continuity. Yes, and this is why it is very amazing indeed that Imam Al-Haddad, on a chapter that talks about Aqidah, he talks about what he talks about the actions taken by a parent, yes, in this case a father, for his children, would have impact, yes, on the progeny. So similarly in our case, yes, I think this would be good to conclude that we have to be very vigilant, not only in taking care of our own aqidah. Inshallah, we are adults. We have the ability to discern between the virtual world and the world we live in. We can distinguish between the hallucinations of the AI program, AI-generated hallucinations, and what is real in the Islamic, in the religion of Islam. But even then, Yes, if we do not have proper isnad of learning, they are still amongst ourselves who are from time to time confused whenever we read a new article on the internet about the religion. We think we are certain about something, and then suddenly, some particular piece of information emerges, and it could be fake, it could be false, it could be a misinterpretation, and suddenly we are left in bewilderment. So that's with us in the age of the internet, of which you have anonymous writers, of which you have fake news, and already then the virtual world threatens our aqidah. What more in a generation if they are separated from their parents, i.e. if they are a generation whose worldview is shaped solely by bots, yes, by an online program. So this is something that we have to ponder, and I think the essential message of Imam Haddad there is that, first we need to secure the right aqidah and how knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to be achieved, and that the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is then preserved, and you increase in knowledge by worship and contemplation of the world and contemplation of the verses of the Quran, and at the same time there is the intergenerational responsibility, yes, inshallah. So I think that should be a good first round.
Bismillah. Bismillah. We're good, yeah, King? We're just going to cut